Have you ever loved someone who constantly pulls away the moment things get real? One day, they're present, even affectionate. The next, they're distant, cold, or completely shut down. If you've been on the receiving end of that push-pull dynamic, you know how confusing and painful it can be. I'm Jim Rowan, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through 6 powerful shifts backed by both psychology and real-life experience that can help turn an avoidantly attached partner into a securely connected one. And no, I'm not talking about manipulating or fixing them. I'm talking about what actually fosters emotional safety for someone whose nervous system is wired to fear closeness. Because here's the truth. Avoidants aren't incapable of love. They just learned early and often that love isn't safe, that being vulnerable leads to pain, that needing someone means losing control. But when the right internal work is paired with grounded, secure connection, something incredible happens. The walls start to lower. Their guard softens, and a real relationship built on trust, not fear, can finally emerge. We'll break it down into 2 parts. What avoidants need to do internally to move towards security, and what partners can do externally to support that growth without self-abandoning. You'll learn why most anxious responses actually trigger avoidance more, and how to create space that invites closeness without chasing it. So if you're tired of walking on eggshells or second-guessing what their silence means, make sure you subscribe, tap the bell to stay updated, and drop a comment to share your story. Because secure love isn't about being perfect. It's about being emotionally safe, and that's something anyone can learn to create, avoidant or not. Let's dive in. Let's get one thing straight. Avoidants don't become secure just by dating someone secure. That's a popular idea in pop psychology, but it's only half the truth. Yes, being with someone calm, emotionally grounded, and consistent can help create a safer emotional environment. But avoidant attachment is wired deep in the nervous system. That means real change has to come from within the avoidant person themselves. It's not something you can love them out of. It's something they have to actively work on. That said, the good news is this: avoidance can absolutely become more secure. But it doesn't happen through pressure chasing or endless emotional overfunctioning from their partner. It happens when they start healing from the inside, and their partner creates the kind of space where that healing can take root. Let's start with the internal work avoidants need to do. First, nervous system regulation. Most avoidantly attached individuals live in a state of low-grade dysregulation. That might show up as irritability, numbness, emotional shutdown, or a chronic need for space. Their nervous system is constantly scanning for threats, especially emotional ones. So when closeness feels too intense, it doesn't feel good. It feels like danger. The solution isn't more logic. It's nervous system work. Things like deep breathing, body scans, cold exposure, nature walks, stretching, even soft instrumental music can all help bring their body back to a regulated state. When their system calms down, emotional connection becomes easier to tolerate. and even enjoy. I once worked with a man named Evan who started doing 10 minutes of grounding breath work every morning. Within 2 weeks, his partner said he was less reactive and more present. The difference wasn't psychological, it was physiological. Second, practicing vulnerability. Avoidants don't fear intimacy because they're heartless. They fear it because being seen has felt unsafe for most of their life. That's why so many avoidants stay emotionally surface level or change the subject when things get too real. But the path to security requires learning how to risk being seen. That doesn't mean oversharing. It means gradual, intentional openness. Saying things like, "I'm not sure how to talk about this, but I want to try," or "I feel overwhelmed, and I don't fully understand why." These are small steps toward vulnerability, and they matter. Vulnerability is how they build co-regulation with their partner instead of defaulting to isolation. Third, healing core wounds. Deep down, many avoidants carry stories like, "If I get close, I'll get hurt. If I need someone, I'll lose myself. If you really knew me, you wouldn't stay." These beliefs weren't created by their current partner. They were built in childhood, often through inconsistent caregiving. Emotional neglect or environments where emotions were punished. Until those beliefs are rewritten, avoidance will continue to retreat at the first sign of closeness. Healing these wounds takes inner work, journaling, therapy, somatic work, or even guided self-inquiry practices like inner child dialogues. But when those wounds begin to heal, the fear around love starts to fade. 4. Communicating needs, not just boundaries. Avoidants are often good at saying what they don't want. "I need space. I don't want to talk right now. I can't deal with this." What they struggle with is expressing what they do need. "I need time to process this, but I want to stay connected." Or, "I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need some quiet, but I still care." Learning to express needs with clarity helps their partner stop guessing. It also helps the avoidant step into a more secure relational role, where boundaries aren't walls, but tools for intimacy. This shift changes the dynamic from "stay away" to "here's how to stay with me." 5. Real self-soothing versus numbing. Here's a big one. Avoidants often confuse self-soothing with numbing out. They think watching 6 hours of YouTube or scrolling TikTok until 2 a.m. is helping them decompress, but really they're avoiding their own emotional reality. True self-soothing means being present with emotion even if it's uncomfortable. It means learning to name feelings, explore where they come from, and then choose a response that honors those emotions without suppressing them. That might be going for a walk, taking a bath, writing in a journal, or even saying to yourself, "This is hard, but I can sit with it." When avoidants stop running from their own feelings, they stop running from others too, and that's when secure connection finally becomes possible. These 5 internal shifts are the foundation of real lasting transformation. They don't happen overnight, and they won't be perfect, but they matter. They turn "I always push people away" into "I can stay and work through this." They transform love from something scary and overwhelming into something that feels safe and shared. In the next section, we'll talk about the external relational behaviors that help support this inner work without overfunctioning or losing yourself in the process. Because while avoidants must take responsibility for their growth, partners can absolutely support the process in powerful, emotionally healthy ways. Ready to dive into that? Let's keep going. Now that we've walked through the internal healing avoidance need in order to become more secure, let's talk about what you, the partner, can do to support that growth in a healthy, sustainable way. Because yes, avoidance can change, but not through pressure, not through overfunctioning, and definitely not by walking on eggshells. Your role isn't to fix them, it's to create an emotionally safe environment where they want to show up differently. That requires clarity, calm presence, and strong boundaries of your own. It's a dance, not a rescue mission. Here's what that looks like in practice. 1. Consistency builds emotional safety. Avoidants don't trust easily, and that's not always because of something you've done. It's often the residue of a childhood marked by emotional unpredictability, parents who were present one day and withdrawn the next. So, when someone shows up in their adult life offering closeness, their nervous system goes on high alert. It asks, "Will you disappear too?" This is why consistency matters. If you say you'll call. If you make a plan, keep it. If you say, "I'm here," be here. Not in a performative way, but in a calm, steady, emotionally available way. Predictability helps them feel safe enough to lower their guard. I once worked with a woman named Holly who dated a fearful avoidant man. Early on, he flaked, often canceled plans, and then would apologize but disappear again. Instead of overreacting or chasing, Holly said, "I care about you, and I'm not here to convince you. I value reliability. If that's something you're working on, I'm open. If not, I'll let this go with respect." He didn't change overnight, but her consistency and boundaries gave him space to confront his own patterns. And that's when he chose to step up, not because she pushed him, but because she modeled steadiness. 2. Warmth and attunement, even if they resist it. Avoidants may act like they don't want emotional closeness, but don't be fooled. Deep down, they crave connection. They just don't know how to tolerate it without feeling emotionally exposed or unsafe. That's where warmth and attunement come in. This isn't about being overly affectionate or smothering them with love notes. It's about small, consistent signals of care, asking how their day was, noticing when they're stressed, making coffee for them in the morning, giving a reassuring touch without words. It's the little things that create a sense of emotional reliability. These gestures bypass their defenses and speak directly to the part of them that still wants to be seen, but in a gentle, non-threatening way. Attunement also means noticing when they're pulling away and not reacting with panic. Instead, try, "Hey, I sense you need some space right now. I just want you to know I'm here when you're ready to reconnect." That one sentence can do more to create trust than hours of emotionally charged conversations. 3. Non-judgmental acceptance. Avoidants don't respond well to emotional blame. They've spent much of their lives feeling like their needs or boundaries weren't acceptable, so when they feel judged, they retreat. That doesn't mean you don't have needs. It means you bring them up without shame. Let's say they didn't text you for 2 days. Instead of, "You obviously don't care." Try. "When I don't hear from you for a while, I start to feel disconnected. I'd love to find a rhythm that works for both of us." You're not attacking. You're inviting. You're saying, "I want to stay connected. Can we find a way that honors both of us?" That tone is what keeps the conversation open instead of pushing them deeper into their shell. 4. Support through acts of service. Many avoidants, especially dismissive types, feel safest in relationships when they can give and receive love through action. Verbal affirmation might feel awkward or even suspicious to them, but doing the dishes when they're tired, bringing them soup when they're sick, helping them fix something they've put off. That's love. They understand. It's not about doing everything for them. It's about learning their love language and offering small acts of care that feel safe and grounding. When you meet them in this space, they begin to trust that closeness doesn't have to be intense or overwhelming. It can be practical, quiet, and real. 5. Respect their autonomy. This one is non-negotiable. Avoidants need autonomy the way anxious partners need reassurance. It's not just a preference. It's wired into their nervous system. When they feel emotionally crowded or obligated, they often interpret it as a threat to their identity or independence. That's when they shut down. But here's the irony. When you stop trying to control or cling, they often come closer. This doesn't mean you ignore your needs or suppress your emotions. It means you let them know you're free to take space, and I trust myself to take care of my own needs too. You're not making them responsible for your emotional state. You're holding your own center, and when you do that, they don't feel trapped. They feel respected. 6. Collaborative communication. Collaborative communication is one of the most overlooked tools in building security with an avoidant partner. Avoidants don't respond well to emotional pressure, even if your intentions are good. When they feel backed into a corner, when conversations feel like interrogations, or when they're met with demands, they often shut down or detach further. That doesn't mean they're indifferent. It means they're overwhelmed, and their default is to protect themselves. That's why questions like, "Can we talk?" can feel triggering to them, especially if there's a history of emotionally intense conversations. But when you approach communication with collaboration instead of confrontation, their walls lower. They feel included, not cornered. For example, instead of saying, "You never open up to me," try asking, "Is there something that would make it easier for you to share when you're feeling off?" Instead of, "Why are you always distant?" try, "Do you need more space lately? I just want to understand how we're both feeling." You're still expressing your needs. You're just doing it in a way that respects their nervous system, their history, and their pace. And here's where it all ties together. Avoidants don't heal because someone proves they're safe. They heal when they realize they don't have to be on guard anymore. That realization happens slowly, through consistency, non-reactivity, and emotional steadiness, not emotional performance or hypervigilance. But don't forget, this can't be one-sided. If you're doing all the work managing your reactions, being patient, giving space, holding the emotional weight, it will drain you. You deserve a relationship that supports your growth too. So yes, help create the safety that allows an avoidant to move towards security. But don't lose sight of yourself in the process. The most powerful dynamic isn't one where you save them. It's one where both of you rise together, because emotional security was never meant to be earned. It's meant to be shared. Let's wrap this up with something real and hopefully healing. Avoidantly attached people are not broken. They're protective, they're guarded, and often they're scared not of you, but of what closeness has meant to them in the past: loss of control, emotional pain, abandonment. That's why avoidants often build walls the moment intimacy starts to deepen. But those walls, they're not permanent. They're just protective patterns that can be softened and reshaped over time with the right support and self-awareness. In this video, we talked about two essential pieces of the healing puzzle. First, the internal work avoidants must do for themselves, regulating their nervous system, practicing vulnerability, healing old wounds, learning to express needs clearly, and replacing numbing with real emotional self-soothing. Second, we explored the external relational behaviors that support that growth. Consistency, warmth, non-judgment, respectful communication, autonomy, and collaborative conversations. These are the keys to creating a relationship that feels emotionally safe, not just for the avoidant, but for you too. But here's the bottom line. This only works if both people are doing the work. You cannot regulate for two people. You cannot hold the emotional weight of a relationship on your own. If your support comes at the cost of your peace, that's not love, it's self-abandonment in disguise. Avoidance can absolutely become more secure, but it's never the result of chasing, fixing, or guilt-tripping. Healing happens in a relationship where both people are clear, emotionally honest, and willing to grow, where boundaries are respected, not resented, where space is given not as punishment, but as a tool for safety, where love isn't a battlefield, but a partnership. So thank you for watching. If this spoke to you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every one of them, and your story matters, because healing doesn't happen in silence. It happens in community. And always remember, you don't have to lose yourself to love someone else. Secure love begins with how you show up for you. See you in the next one.